City Commission meeting of Tuesday, November 17th, 2020. Does the records show that all commissioners are present? First item up is the order of business. Mrs. Carlson, are there any changes to the order of business?
There is 2 additions to the order of business. In 3C, there will be 2 more reports, one on COVID-19 update for operations, and then a December 1st work session possibility. And that would be it.
Thank you, Mrs. Carlson. Any questions for Mrs. Carlson on the amended order of business? Now I'd look for a motion on the order of business.
So moved. So moved.
That came through weird.
Sorry. I heard John, and so then I stopped talking.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Oderman to approve the amended order of business, second by Commissioner Soboluk. Am I correct?
Sure.
All right. Any further discussion on the amended order of business? Not all in favor of the amended order of business, state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Consent agenda. Commissioners, are there anything or any items on the consent agenda you wish to discuss with the city staff? For approval, we have minutes, accounts payable, and approval of tobacco 2021 tobacco license renewals.
Move to approve, Mr. President.
We have a motion to approve the consent agenda by Commissioner Frederick,
Second.
second by Commissioner Walla. Any further discussion on the consent agenda? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Mr. Oderman?
Aye.
Mrs. Soboluk?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. We have a couple of timetable items this evening, so we'll get right into the normal agenda. First item up is the monthly financial report, and that'll be handled by our city accountant, Mr. Morey. Welcome.
Thank you, President Decker and Commissioners. Starting off with our treasurer's report, as of the end of October, we're about $63.7 million to end October, down just about $1 million from where we were at the end of our September financial report. But we're still in that $60 to $65 million range. Our investments, no major changes to our investments. We're still right around $38 million, so no major changes to our investments since last month. Moving on to our 1% sales tax. So the red line is 2020 and the blue line is for 2019. So you can see at the end of the red line in October, we're about $490,000. We're down about $79,000 from where we were in October of 2019. It's about a 13% decrease from the prior year. Through the first 10 months, we're down about $244,000 overall. So we're down about 4.7%. Through the first 10 months of 2020.
Mr. Morey, these lag, how many, 2 months?
Yeah, it is a 2-month lag, and with these graphs here, we're showing when we actually collect the money. So for the public, so when we get money in January and February, those dollars are actually moved back to the prior year, just like you're saying, President Decker. This slide here, this 0.5% sales tax is exactly half of the previous slide. This is another one we show just for the public to show that we collect our sales tax in a 1% fund and a 0.5% fund.
So that number up there needs, Mr. Morey, if you go back, that 284 is incorrect.
Yeah, it should be, it looks like that needs to be, the number, the 284 looks like it's the exact same as the blue,
Yes.
but it should be exactly half of the 490.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Moving on to our hospitality tax. So you can see in October of 2020, at the end of the red line there, we're down about $14,000 from October of 2019. So we're down about 13% in October. Through the first 10 months, we're actually down about 80,000 overall, which is a 9.6% decrease through the first 10 months. We reforecasted down about 35% in 2019. We actually collected just over $1 million, and we're actually projecting we'll still collect about 939,000 if we collect 92,000 again in November and December. In our occupancy tax, so again, you can see the red line is down about $30,000. So it's about a 46% decrease from October of 2019. Through the first 10 months total, we're down about 105,000, so about a 33% decrease overall. And it looks like in 2019 total, we collected about 391,000. If our revenues stay the same, we're projecting to get about 281,000 total for 2020. Moving on to our oil impact fund. So for the first 10 months, in October of 2020, we're down about 283,000 compared to where we were in October of 2019. So about a 23% decrease there. Through the first 10 months, we're down about 2 million overall, which is about 17%. In 2019, we collected a total of 13.8 million. We're on pace to collect about 11.2 million in 2020. Moving on to our general fund revenues and expenses. So these graphs are as of October 31st. So after 10 months, we should be at 83.3% if we were exact. So in our revenues, you can see we're actually quite a bit ahead of where we are projected to be in October of 2020. So we're 95.79% collected in general fund revenue, with only 4% remaining. And then as expenses, we're still under budget with expenses. Again, so it should be 83%. We're only 73.39% expended at this point in the year. And then moving on to our enterprise funds. So in our enterprise funds, again, if 83% is our goal through 10 months, we're at 81.82. So just about where we need to be with our enterprise fund revenue. And our enterprise fund expenses were about 72%, so we're still ahead of where we need to be in our enterprise fund expenses. So with that, I'll do my best to answer any questions, and city staff recommends approval.
Are there any questions for Mr. Maury?
So, Mr. Maury, on those expenses that are still, under budget, do you have any projection on where that's going to land by the end of the year?
It's tough to tell at this point, just with different projects and stuff we have out there. So I don't have a number for you at this point, but I think with the November report coming next month, we should have a really good idea of where we'll finish the year.
Great.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Maury or city staff on any of the tax collections or our oil tax? Hearing no questions, I look for a motion to approve the monthly financial report.
Move to approve.
I have a motion to approve by Commissioner Walla,
Second.
second by Commissioner Oderman. Any further questions, comments?
Mr. Maury, accounts receivable, are we looking at some of these 91 over accounts again?
Yeah, I know that's part of our accounts payable technician job is to reach out to those people, and also to DCI. And Ms. Carlson can speak to that as well, but I know that is something that she's currently working on.
Do we know what this one big one is for 35,000?
I can tell you.
And same with Burger Sanitation, what's going on there?
For the 35,000 one, that was an insurance claim, and they've just been, they're through DCI right now in the credit collections, and they are making small payments.
Okay.
The Burger Sanitation, they fell over into the 90 days and have not paid. So anybody that falls over into that 90 and over are going to show up on this list. They should come off through payment, but some of them just, It's by the turn of the,
Is that like,
Hey.
what is that, a waste disposal charge or something, or?
I believe so.
Okay,
And we can always, if any of the commissioners want any information on these receivables, just let me know and I can get the details for you.
okay. I was just curious about the real big one, but that makes sense.
Yep.
That could be being paid back for a long time.
Yep. There's quite a few in here that have to do with risk management, insurance claims, property damage type things that we've been paid by the insurance, but there's the amount that's left over and made by payments.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mhm.
Right, we have a motion to approve with a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Mr. Oderman?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mrs. Sobeluk?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries.
Thank you.
Next item up is an abatement hearing. Mr. Hirschfeld, City Assessor, will be presenting.
Thank you, Mr. President, Commissioners. We have 27 abatements before you tonight. 24 of those are represented by 12 townhouse properties that are on there for the year 2018 and 2019. The property owner has been in contact with me multiple times over the past few years. And we finally got together in 2020 to review the property and the record card. We did find that there was a condition adjustment that needed to be made to better reflect what the actual condition of the properties were. That resulted in a roughly $20,000 adjustment to each one of those. And those properties had also been listed for sale over the past several years at something just under where we were assessed at, and they haven't sold, so there was a little additional support for that decrease. The abatement request is there in the darker orange. Staff recommendations in the darker green, and for those 12 properties over both 18 and 19, they are the same number, and so we're recommending on those that we go ahead and go with the owner's request, and which is also the staff recommendation. Do you have any questions?
Are there any questions for Mr. Hirschfeld on the abatement for the Mr. Hoff properties of 2018 and 2019? I know we ask this every year. Mrs. Winkle, do we need to list each property individually, or can we group these?
What I would suggest, Mr. President, is going through the list here for the ones identified with Mr. Hoff 2019, make a motion for those, Mr. Hoff 2018, and then the other ones on the bottom there, I would recommend doing those individually.
Okay. You recommend that the motion also lists each property individually in case for Mr. Hoff, or as we can do since they're a group of townhouses, we can do each abatement for that year separately?
I think that's appropriate, President Decker. I think given the packet and the information that's contained in it, I think the intent is that you're looking at these independently, but the motion includes each of those for the respective years.
The staff recommendation is in the green column. Am I correct?
That is correct, Mr. President.
And that's what you're recommending to us to go forward with, and the property owner is in agreement with those amounts.
That is correct.
Any further questions for Mr. Hirschfeld on these properties? Not, I'd look for a motion on the Tracy Hoff 2019 abatement.
Mr. President, I move we approve the staff recommendation on the Tracy Hoff 2019 abatement.
There was a motion by Commissioner Frederick to approve the staff recommendation for the 2019 abatement.
I'll second that.
Second by Commissioner Sobeluk. Any further discussion, questions, comments for Mr. Hirschfeld? Not, we'll vote. Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mrs. Sobeluk?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Mr. Oderman?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Next item up is the Tracy Hoff 2018 abatement. Again, Mr. Hirschfeld and his staff are recommending the totals in the green. The staff recommendation is in the darker orange. Staff recommendation is there in the darker orange. Any further discussion, questions, comments for Mr. Hirschfeld? Not, we'll vote. Mr. Frederick? Aye. Mrs. Sobeluk? Aye. Mr. Oderman? Aye. Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Next item up is the Tracy Hoff 2018 abatement. Again, Mr. Hirschfeld and his staff are recommending the totals in the green. there any questions for Mr. Hirschfeld on this adjustment, in this abatement process?
Mr. President, I move to approve the Tracy Off 2018 abatements to the staff recommendation.
We have a motion to approve the staff recommendation for the 2018 abatement.
Second.
And a second by Commissioner Soboluk. Any further questions, comments? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mrs. Soboluk?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Mr. Oderman?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. First item up on the hotels from the Frederickson and Byron Group, their 2018 abatement would be the Lodge Pros Dickinson LLC. And the recommendation again, that you have come to an agreement with them that that is appropriate number in the green.
That is correct,
I agree.
Mr. President. The staff recommendation matches what their abatement request was, so there's no concern with those there.
So the first item up would be the Lodge Pros Dickinson LLC.
I'll move to approve the staff recommendation of the abated price
We
for
have a
Lodge
recommend-
Pros.
We have a motion to approve the Lodge Pro LLC abatement for 2018 by Commissioner Soboluk.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Oderman. Any further discussion or questions from Mr. Hirschfeld? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mrs. Soboluk?
Aye.
Mr. Oderman?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. The next item up is the Dickinson Homestay LLC. Again, the recommendation by staff is in the green. And that is an agreed-to abatement negotiated between our staff and the owners. Any questions? If there are no questions, I'd look for a motion on this item.
I'll move to approve staff recommendations for Dickinson Homestay LLC.
We have a motion by Commissioner Walla to approve the staff recommendation for the 2018 abatement of the Dickinson Homestay LLC.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Frederick. Any further questions, comments? Hearing none, we'll vote. Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mrs. Soboluk?
Aye.
Mr. Oderman?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. The last property is the Dickinson Properties LLC. Again, in negotiation between our city staff and the ownership group. They have come to an agreement on this abatement. Are there any questions for Mr. Hirschfeld? If there are no questions, I'd look for a motion.
Move to approve the city staff recommendation on Dickinson Properties LLC.
We have a motion to approve by Commissioner Oderman,
Second?
second by Commissioner Walla. Any further discussion, questions for Mr. Hirschfeld? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Oderman?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mrs. Soboluk?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Anything else, Mr. Hirschfeld?
That's it, Mr.
All right.
President. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Commissioners. Thank you.
We'll move right into reports, and we have our interim city administrator, Carlson. She has an update, some reports, a bank rate update.
Thank you, President Decker and Commissioners. I just wanted to mention that we, staff and the bank, American Bank Center, we hold virtually a couple meetings in the year, and we discuss where we are at financially. And to give you an update, we were earning 0.88% on our checking accounts that have the interest bearing, and in 18, and then we increased it to 1.26 back in early of 19, and then in January it dropped to 0.55. So since then we have met again. We have done some financial changes in our insurance, or FDIC insured accounts for our investments. It's called demand deposit account. We have $30 million in there, and each one is split for a $250,000, each different banks where we get insured for each one of those through that. So with that, it was mutually decided that we would move another $5 million over into that, and then we would raise our 0.55% to 0.60 as of November 18th, which would be tomorrow, percentage. So is there any questions you have for me to explain how we do this?
Are there any questions for Mrs. Carlson on the bank rate? Is that all you had for the bank rate, Mrs. Carlson?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll move on to the COVID-19 update.
On the COVID-19 update operations, I'm looking for directions of the commission since we've received the executive order from the governor and through the health department on mandating masks. It has been asked, are we, for the public, going to, for our citizens coming into our facility, are we still going to stay open? Will we be shutting down? We just would like some direction on how you want to do this. As far as right now, we are leaving the doors open. We are asking citizens to wear masks in. We are asking our staff to mandate to the policy of wearing the mask in all our areas, public areas, and working our staff. But we do have some concerns on some different areas and different public works and some of the different areas where it's harder to do with the masks. So looking for direction of where the commissioners would like us to operate with these.
Can you give us some examples of what we're concerned about?
Director Zuroff, do you want to mention on the public works area?
Sure. President Decker and Commission, can you hear me? You know, I guess there's a lot of things, you know, I required all staff to wear masks, you know, yesterday morning after the governor's mandate. I guess outside working in the public right now, I'm requiring masks. But, you know, I guess what is, you want to see, you know, staff, you want them to have masks on all the time during, you know, in our public works facility, outdoors, even though there is separation. I guess that's kind of the, you know, what direction would you like, I guess, all staff? Plus, I think it's important for not just public works staff, but all employees to kind of be on the same page of what direction the staff mandate is directed by commission.
I mean,
Well, if they're outside and working, my understanding of the order is if they're able to social distance, and especially if there's physical labor involved, they don't have to have a mask on.
Yeah, that's correct. That's, I believe that's the
That's the way I
guideline,
read it.
President, yeah. If you can maintain social distancing
Right.
when you're outside, I don't see why there would be any reason why they'd have to have a mask on. Now, and if they're inside and they're in their office, they shouldn't have to have their mask on either.
But, you know, we have a lot of staff that don't have, you know, limited offices, but I think we've had some situations where staff, you know, welcomes the mask, and others where they don't feel they need the mask, and it's questionable on social distancing. And so I just want to make sure that, you know, I'm directing staff accordingly.
Well, if they have the ability, and you have a very large facility, and I understand that people want to be together and on breaks and stuff like that, but I think they have the ability out there in that building to distance themselves. And then when it comes to office space, if you're in your office by yourself, I don't see the reason why you need to be sitting there with a mask on, or driving a sweeper down the street, or any kind of heavy equipment. If you're the solo inside the cab.
Now, Mr. Zuroff, do you have any situations where you have staff members that share an office but on different shifts?
We have some different maybe not offices necessarily, but trucks maybe, vehicles, equipment
Okay.
that would be shared.
Are they taking the precautions, wiping those down?
We started that last spring.
Right.
And, we'll reiterate that with the cleaning we've kept up. And I think, so that's kind of been, we've kept up with the cleaning protocol.
Because I think, that's been the policy in the police department and the
Yeah.
fire department. They're shared vehicles, they're wiping everything down, they're wiping equipment down. They're doing what's necessary.
Because with offices, there is some evidence that suggests that, if you have somebody that's in that office alone, they don't have a mask on, somebody else comes on shift, replaces that person, and they go into that office within 30 minutes, take their mask off. There are still particulates in the air that they could inhale. So, that's just a concern that we discovered at the hospital. That
Well,
is
one of the things we've done too, is recently shut down our baler because we had a lot of close distancing and
Sure.
we've had some outbreak. So we've closed the baler, but that was one of the areas that we were having issues with close proximity. They had to work close together, but we've continued now to require the mask. Even though we're shut down now, we're requiring more masks in that area. But I didn't know if you wanted Linda to kind of have a policy for all employees that, what is required, and I guess that's something we'll work through.
Right.
So.
And I just wanted to mention that Commissioner Oderman, sharing offices, that's a lot in City Hall.
Mhm.
We do have a few that have to share offices. They may be desks, a good 6 feet apart and stuff, but they're still sharing the same area
Mhm.
and stuff. And we've put plexiglass between and stuff, and it has become a concern that they're on the phones 24/7, in their time period, but it gets pretty warm and stuff, or people cannot understand them and things like that. So this is where I was thinking, okay, we want to follow exactly what the executive order is. We believe in the health safety, but do we go back to possibility of where we were in March or April, where we shut the front doors and then had them call, and then we brought them into an area where we could have a conversation with them or that, and then encourage people to put the drop box using the utilities for utility billing and things like that. We still want to be able to hold court. And
That was
has been
going to
just-
be my next question, is
Yep.
how big is your court case, and can we suspend court until after this mandate?
Well,
ahead.
Mr. President, Commissioners, it's a possibility if it needs to be done. We are able to take care of a lot of cases electronically through written plea agreements and so forth. The judge still has to hear and see individuals that end up incarcerated for bond hearings, but it could be done. There will things that will backlog us in January and February, but I think the overall arching premise is, what do you think is in the best safety for protocols moving forward? But it could be done if it needed to be done.
I was going to make the recommendation that we maybe suspend court until after the mandate ends on the 13th. I was also going to make the recommendation that we don't have our first city commission meeting unless there's pressing issues of that very first Tuesday.
December 1st.
We don't have that meeting. We just have one meeting, because we're all, by law, by century code, we only have to have one meeting a month.
Yep.
We can have that one meeting on the 15th, if I'm correct on dates.
Right, you are correct.
Just have the one meeting, and that'll be past the mandate. We'll be better outfitted to know where everything's going, hopefully after the 13th.
I know in speaking with the court when the mandate came out, I will say court has been doing a splendid job from the time that they reopened back up in April or May. They only allow the actual defendant in there. They have to wear a mask. Only if it's a juvenile, they have to be accompanied by a parent. But that's it. They are spread apart in here. We usually don't have any more than 13. in the courtroom, and they've been doing a great job on that, and they don't want to shut the court down, but that's why I'm asking for direction and stuff. So, because they don't want to be backlogged,
Well,
again, like
my
they were.
personal feelings, and I'll take your recommendation, Mrs. Winko, I think if we can suspend court until after the mandate, if you don't feel that it would be too much of a burden, I think that would be my recommendation. And I also, like I said, I'd also say we just have the one meeting in December.
Okay.
Unless there's pressing issues, but then we can always call a special if there's something that needs to be dealt with immediately.
Correct, and that would be my next one, but it is 5 o'clock, so I'm wondering if
Okay.
you want me to hold on.
President Decker, there was one thing, we take payments at our scale.
Mhm.
The public entering, do we require the public to wear masks entering our facility? There were some questions there too, hours and things like that.
I would say that you highly recommend that they wear a mask, but at this point, that we're not going to get confrontational. As long as your employees are wearing their protective issue, I know there's plexiglass there. I mean, even with the payment, you got payment sliding underneath that plexiglass. Mask or no mask, that contacted by somebody that could have whatever transmissible, virus, be it COVID or the flu or whatever, being passing payment. So, I mean, it's highly recommended. Educate people at the same time.
Yeah, understand.
We don't want to pit people against each other.
I understand completely. There were just questions of, shutting
Right.
down there 2 hours, but I guess at this point on our side, we'll just continue operations.
Okay.
We'll get 5 o'clock.
Yeah. We'll bring the work session back up, and we'll discuss this a little bit more, but it is 5 o'clock, so we'll jump into our 5 o'clock timetable. First item up, we have a swearing in of officers, Officer Dylan Prouse and Kayla Richard.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the commission. At this time, I'd like to introduce to the community and to the commission our two newest police officers, Dylan Prouse and Kayla Richard. If they'd step forward, please. Officer Dylan Prouse is a Trinity High School graduate. He continued his education at Valley City State University, earning a Bachelor of Science degree in Fisheries and Wildlife Science. His past career experiences include a park ranger with the U.S. Corps of Engineers, a reserve deputy for the Barnes County Sheriff's Office, and a wildlife technician for the North Dakota Game and Fish Department. Officer Prouse started with the Dickinson Police Department on October 12th. Officer Kayla Richard is a Bismarck Century graduate. She attended Bismarck State College, earning an associate's degree in criminal justice. She then attended Minot State University, where she earned her Bachelor of Science degree in criminal justice. Her past career experience includes being a juvenile institution resident specialist for the North Dakota Youth Correctional Center, North Dakota State Radio Dispatcher, and Deputy Clerk of Court in Burleigh County. Officer Richard also began her employment with the Dickinson Police Department on October 12th. This time, I'd like to ask Interim City Administrator Carlson to swear them in, please.
This is yours, Caitlin. This is yours, Dylan. Okay, we're going to do our oath. If you raise your right hand. I state your name, will support, obey, and defend the Constitution
I, Dylan Prouse, will support, obey, and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States
and the state of North Dakota, the city of Dickinson, to the best of my ability.
the state of North Dakota and the city of Dickinson to the best of my ability,
And that I will strive always to meet the highest ethical standards implicit in my employment.
and that I will strive always to meet the highest ethical standards implicit in my employment
In furtherance of the best public interest.
and in furtherance of the best public interest.
Very good, thank you. You can sign there, and those are your certificates.
Welcome aboard. Officer Prouse, you want to tell us a little bit besides what Chief Dossinger filled us in?
Yeah. I guess I graduated in Trinity in 2016 and then just graduated Valley City State University in 2020. So I am pretty young yet, but I'm very grateful to serve the city of Dickinson, and very happy that I can represent the Dickinson Police Department. So thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Officer Richard?
Hi, my name's Kayla Richard. Like you heard, I'm originally from Bismarck, but I have a lot of family out here in Dickinson. So I'm excited to kind of be back in my roots here, and I look forward to working with the community and getting to know more people, and using my past experiences with my new career. So thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next up, we have a public hearing, our Chapter 39 amendments, our underground mining overlay district. That will be handled by City County Planner Josephson. Oh, we have Mr. Hadley coming up.
Thank you, Mr. President. You get me tonight. Stephen is a little under the weather. First item. So the first item, the first reading of ordinance, it would be 1707. And it's the creation of the mining overlay district that I believe we talked about at the last meeting. My staff's recommendation, based on that, planning staff didn't realize that we had some projects that were done at the landfill. And I think there's some mapping that's also done on that. We would like to regroup and get that GIS data. Also share that probably with the state of North Dakota because they don't have it. And take it back to Planning Commission and basically have them make a new recommendation back to you. So staff's recommendation would be to remand this back to the Planning Commission to move forward in a future meeting with the City Commission. That would be the cleanest way to probably address this, I would think.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Hadley on remanding this back to the Planning and Zoning for further investigation?
Mr. President, is that just a motion
Yes.
to remand? Okay.
So just looking, if you had any questions, if not, I'd look for a motion.
I'd make that motion.
We have a motion by Commissioner Oderman to remand this back to Planning and Zoning.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Frederick. Any further discussion or questions? Being it's remanded, we will not have the public hearing, even though it's been noticed as a public hearing.
Correct, President Decker, there will be no need for the continued public hearing.
There are no further questions or comments. Proceed with the vote. Mr. Oderman?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Mrs. Sobeluk?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. Next item up is Public Zoning District Standards. Again, Mr. Hadley, you'll be presenting.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President and the Commission. This would be the first reading of Ordinance 1708. Maybe clarification, Attorney Winko, I don't know if we skipped numbers. That last one I just remanded, would that be 1707 then? Possibly? Since we're remanding it back, or would it keep the same number?
I believe that one, I can't see on the letter here, but and maybe Ms. Binscock can answer that question. Was that assigned a number?
So it wouldn't be 1707, this would be 1707.
It'd be the first, it's first reading, so we'd be assigning it. So I would think this would be a 1707 then?
Correct, yes.
So this is 1707.
So let's go back to that. This is the first reading. It went through the Planning Commission for public district standards, and there were some questions on that as well. Most of the public facilities that we have, whether they be pumping facilities or whatnot, they're really not located in the public zone. We have the public zone that basically encompasses a lot of the Parks Department, a lot of Park and Rec Department, the school, the new school is in that, Stark County, courthouse is in the public designation. Don't have a lot of public facilities that are allowed or put into that. They are allowed in that actual zone. And they're allowed in a bunch of other zones too. They're basically all residential with a special use permit, and commercial and industrial are allowed outright. So I don't think that there's any more confusion. I believe staff is on board with that. and understands that we can move forward with that. The intent of having some standards, as you can see on the screen, some front yard setbacks, just some minimum height requirements and spacing requirements as development, whether it be done by the county, city, any public agency, is done adjacent to any properties, that it has some sort of a standard. So it did go through the Planning Commission and received a recommendation of approval. I haven't received any comments from the public since this has gone through the Planning Commission to date, and staff would recommend approval of the first reading of 1707.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hadley. Any questions for Mr. Hadley on 1707? This is a public zoning district standards. And this is the first reading, so it will be a public hearing. If there are no questions for Mr. Hadley, we'll open up the public hearing. Anyone from the public wishes to come forward, has any concerns or questions on the public zoning district standards, please come forward, state your name. And let us hear your concerns or questions for city staff or the commission. Anyone from the public? There's also the ability to call in if you're watching online. Again, that number is 701-456-7006.
The conference is currently empty. You will hear silence or music on hold when connected.
Again, anyone from the public has any concerns with Ordinance 1707, which is the public zoning district standards, please come forward, state your name, or call 701-456-7006. Anyone from the public? Seeing no one from the room, in the room here has any concerns or questions, and no one online has any concerns or questions, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, do you have any further questions for Mr. Hadley or staff on this ordinance? If not, I'd look for a motion.
I'll move to approve.
We have a motion to approve by Commissioner Sobeluk, the Public Zoning District Standards, Ordinance 1707.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Frederick. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. Mr. Sobeluk?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Mr. Oderman?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries on 1707. Next item up is public comments not on the agenda. If there are anybody in the audience that has any public comments that were not on the agenda this evening, feel free to come forward, state your name, address the commission with your public comments, or you can call 701-456-7006. And if you have any public comments on items that were not on the agenda this evening. If anyone wants to come forward, or call in 701-456-7006. This is public comments. Seeing and hearing no one has any comments on items that were not on our agenda, we'll close that section. We'll go back to Mrs. Carlson on your COVID report and the guidance that you're wishing to receive on city operations. I think our last discussion is back to Mrs. Winko on court. And
Yes.
if you feel that, if city staff feels you're operating in a safe manner and you want to continue, I feel that you guys are, if it's running in that manner and you feel that it's safe, the only thing that would deter is if you, I think if you lock the front door, I think that changes the dynamic a little bit. Would you agree with that, or?
I agree with that. I feel, from my perspective, since the executive orders come out, staff has stepped up, operations are still running, and I feel that we can still continue. The only thing that would affect it, I feel, is if we started losing staff.
Right.
You know, during the period, then I may suggest it.
And
But
we have, the majority of the personnel that interact with the public are the front
front windows here,
gals and then court.
and then court.
Right.
President Decker, Commissioners, if the commission did consider suspending court, we have it on Thursdays, so that would be, we have the holiday obviously coming up next week, so you'd be looking at 3 weeks of that suspension. I guess I reiterate Ms. Carlson's comments. I think that the city's, the court staff have done a phenomenal job adapting to dealing with the foot traffic, and I applaud them for their efforts. I guess Ms. Carlson probably has a better feel for this than I do, since I'm not physically in the building, obviously, and if city staff, and specifically the court staff, have reiterated that they feel comfortable, I think if we can continue those operations, I'm all for that. And I would just defer to Ms. Carlson and her conversations with specifically the court staff.
If you're comfortable with it right now, as court is right now, I personally, I don't know the rest of the commissioners' opinions, but I'm fine with you guys continuing. If for some reason you do start to lose some staff, and please let us know that you need to make an adjustment. And I mean, it's within your authority to make that adjustment. I mean, just let us know what you're going to do in case we have to start fielding calls.
Correct.
So,
I guess.
I do feel that the executive team, we've been talking about this since Monday, and I feel that we're going to go forward with it, and we have been talking about if there is staff loss, what are we going to do, and how we're adapting. But we had a run through in March, and we know what we can do. We've learned a lot, so I think we can go forward. I appreciate that.
And Linda, some have the ability to work from home if they're not comfortable coming into the office, correct?
Yes, some do. Yes, it depends on which area that they're in. Yeah.
I mean, as long as we're getting the work is getting done.
Exactly.
That is the biggest concern.
Mr. Zuroff, and well, I guess any of the department heads here that would like to speak to this, do we have kind of a number on what kind of positive cases we'd hit where we run into a difficult time providing city services?
Well, like I said earlier, we have shut the Baylor down because we had significant
exposure.
Yeah, thank you. Exposure there. So we have shut that down. If that continues, so far we're continuing our collection routes, the landfill, and we are down considerably over 50% in our fleet also. But right now we have everybody's, covering in different areas. I think where it might be an issue, especially if we start getting a lot of snow, things like that, where we count on a lot of our staff to cover, that might become an issue. But right now we're doing okay, and summer coming back. So we've talked about, like Linda said, since March, of how are we going to cover, who can do what if we have issues. And so far we're continuing to provide the services. It just, if it continues at the Baylor facility, some things we might have to reduce hours, things like that. But right now we're continuing collection and our other services.
Okay. How about for the chiefs here? Chief Dossinger, you got your mic on already, so.
Yes. As far as the police department side of things, obviously we've had positive cases in the past, and we continue to deal with new positive cases as we move forward. We obviously have had to adjust schedules to make sure that we meet the needs of our community on the public safety side of it. Police department staff have done an excellent job in being flexible and picking up or rescheduling their shifts. Obviously, we have altered some of our normal processes, such as ride-alongs, youth academies, citizens police academy, a number of those things that we just can't do it right now. And we try to interact with the public as much as we can through other public relation events, but we want to make sure that we still continue to build on those community relationships. Obviously, when people come to our Public Safety Center to get fingerprinted or for sex offender registration, there are mask requirements for those people to keep our staff safe and healthy. Our staff has done an excellent job in taking a very sensible and a reasonable approach of wearing masks in our facility and when they're out in public, and that's all that I can ask for at this point in time.
Commissioner, sorry. We're back up to 100% in the fire department with staffing. We're taking the same approach as the police department. We've been using full precautions on all EMS calls for the last 3 months, so we're not really seeing too big, of an effect in the fire department. We're limiting public access into the fire station just because, we have people sleeping in there, living in there 24/7. So, but yeah, again, we're trying to interact with the community. We've really taken the approach of getting on Facebook to get that interaction and not have that face-to-face, but we are taking every precaution possible.
That's good to hear, and I mean, I'm not so much concerned about, I am concerned about the continuing of services, but I'm more concerned about guys getting, guys or gals getting knocked out and not being able to provide for their families. I think that's the concern that we have to protect our staff and do everything that they can, because, just through the experience at the hospital and my own experience of close contact quarantine, and I think there's others that have been up here, that is a huge mental health hit when you have to sit at home and you can't do anything. So, it's a significant blow to your mental health and your self-esteem when you can't do anything. And you can work remotely and things like that, but it's not the same. So I really appreciate and applaud you guys for doing what you're doing. So.
Anything else, Mr. Carlson?
Not on that subject. This follows right into the next one is the December 1st work session. The reason we were looking at a special work session is because of the non-compliance that we have in the liquor license renewals. We have about 10 of them that we need to discuss, just like we did with the alcohol in the work session. We have some non-compliance. We need to know whether or not they're going to go forward. How would you, if we would not do the work session, would it be better if these were sent to you with the information, and we can do a virtual if you want to, if you don't want to do a regular work session on the December 1st?
I guess my first comment would be to the commission on that first meeting of December. Are we okay with having the meeting, or would we rather postpone it until after?
I'm fine with it.
I'm in the path of business as usual, so.
Okay. I guess we'll have that work session.
Okay, and this would be, would you like to have it just before, about an hour? Do you want to start at 2:30? What would you like to do?
What do you?
There's about 10 of them. You will have the applications in front of you. You'll have the Chief Dossinger, possibly Captain Ciani there, explaining some things. We have the regs, and we need to be able to move these forward, because if there's any issues that have to be complied, they don't get their license from the state until we approve. So we've got to get, it's kind of a push-push.
Can we get this information like
Ahead of
soon?
time?
So and a synopsis from staff on so we can look at this, so we're not in this work session for 4 hours trying to hash out these things?
That's something that I have been talking with staff, and I think that we can send you the information of what the report states. There's no confidential information that comes from the application, but so you know what the issues are, and then you'd have them up front before you even come in, if that would be applicable to you.
I think that would be very helpful to have that information before we got there.
Okay. I will go through the attorney to make sure that the information that we send is proper. And that is the end of my reports.
Okay, thank you. Public safety, we have no items this evening. Engineering, none. Public Works. We'll move on to planning. We have a Chapter 39 amendment, the West Villard Overlay District. This is ordinance number 1705.
Excuse me. Get this thing working. Yes, thank you, Mr. President and Commission. This would be the second reading of ordinance 1705. I had a public hearing last meeting. There was no public comment on it. There hasn't been any public comment on it since that meeting to staff. It is kind of a cleanup project to include some very well taken care of homes to kind of preserve them, since we're really not looking to expand commercial at this time in those areas, and something that staff would support, and staff would recommend approval of ordinance 1705 as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Hadley. Are there any questions for Mr. Hadley on this overlay district? If there are no questions for Mr. Hadley, I'd look for a motion on 1705.
Mr. President, I move to approve second reading and final passage of ordinance 1705.
We have a motion to approve the second reading and final passage of 1705 by Commissioner Frederick.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Sobeluk. Any further discussion, questions for staff? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mrs. Sobeluk?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Mr. Oderman?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. Next item up is 1706, under the accessory dwelling units. Mr. Hadley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. As you said, ordinance 1706, second reading, accessory dwelling units. That also had a public hearing at the last meeting. There were no public comments on that. We did have some staff conversations on this as it went through the process. It was amended so it wouldn't include the R1 single-family zone. And since that meeting, there hasn't been any public comment to planning staff, and staff would recommend ordinance 1706 as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Hadley. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Mr. Hadley on 1706?
I've just got two, Mr. Hadley. So, in the event that one of these properties were to sell, and let's say it's an existing one that has an accessory dwelling unit in it, it has to come in compliance then, if it were to sell?
It can't sell separately, Commissioner, but you can sell the property as a whole, so it can't be subdivided out on a separate parcel or condoized. But when that property sells, like if you sell your home and it has that to me, I'd have full use of that accessory structure as well. Because it's it would be a permitted use. So.
Okay. All right. And then, what if you were to put like a deck or something like that on a house that had an apartment in the basement, and it wasn't? Because you're making a structural change to a house that has, let's say, I'll take my house that I own that I talked about at the last meeting, for example, where I'm renting out that basement apartment, and I approach you guys to put a deck on my house. Does that bring? I mean, do I have to do something to get this permitted?
Well, it would
to allow for that.
That probably wouldn't meet the accessory structure guidelines, so it wouldn't be under this, but you'd have to meet the requirements for coverage, and then the construction, it would go through the site planning and permitting process through Leonard's department. As far as whether or not, I think maybe you're asking that the second unit in the basement, whether or not it was conforming, not conforming, or whatever. That's really kind of a Leonard question, and whether or not that they would look at that. And as far as a deck permitting, I'm really not involved in that part of it, the deck permitting. It definitely wouldn't follow under the accessory dwelling.
Okay.
Unit.
All right.
So I don't know. Leonard,
I think, Mr.
address
Flint,
that?
he sent out a little info on this. I don't know if you guys got that email, but.
Yeah.
President Decker, Commissioners, you would be issued a deck permit on an existing with that use, if it was an established use. You could get a deck permit.
Okay, yeah, I wanted to clarify that, all of a sudden somebody wants to improve their property and all of a sudden they run afoul of the city because they've been doing something that before this ordinance was not permitted, not permitted, but,
And to
yeah.
get a good understanding, just give us a call.
Good. And I appreciate that you did send some information out last night. I appreciated that, so thank you.
You're
So
welcome.
just to be clear, you have a basement, a house, an older house with a basement apartment. As long as that was its original intent and it's not
And
ever
that
gone
u-
away from that.
And the use has been kept up. If there hasn't been a lapse of time of a year, our code states if you haven't used it for that use for a year, it goes back to essentially the R1. If you're zoned R1, that's a R1 use.
Sure.
If you're in a R2 or R3 and you want to make that use has stopped, you'd have to bring it up to code as far as the separation required by the building code for those units.
Okay. And if it was a 2-unit, but then somebody bought it and used it as a single family, you couldn't revert it back.
Correct.
Without making those changes that are required by this.
Right, yeah,
Yeah,
which would be,
you wouldn't do
Not
that.
cost
Yeah,
effective.
you
it wouldn't be
do that.
cost effective at that point. Okay, just so we're clear on that, so.
Any other questions for either Mr. Schwinn or Mr. Hadley on
Thank you.
1706? Not, I'd look for a motion on 1706.
Move to approve.
We have a motion by Commissioner Oderman to approve 1706.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Walla. Any further discussion, questions, comments? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Oderman?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mrs. Sobeluk?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. The next item up, we handled again by Mr. Hadley. It is an amendment to the Joint Powers Agreement for County Planner Steve Josephson.
Thank you, Mr. President, Commission. Yes, this would be an amendment to the existing joint powers agreement with Stark County, and it's a cost share agreement. We do 50% of Stephen's time, wages, and benefits, and the change in this one includes up to a $750 per year additional cost, and that would be for training and professional affiliations. So the county would share equal portions. Ms. Winko has reviewed this, I believe, as well, and is on board with it. Staff would recommend approval of this amendment to the joint powers agreement with Stark County.
It says not to exceed 500 in
Yeah, it
here.
says 500 in ours.
And I can state that because when I relooked at it, it is only $500. They lowered their travel expense, so we're up to 500.
So it should be 500?
So
It-
that is correct then?
That is correct.
Okay. Any other questions?
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve by Commissioner Frederick,
Second?
second by Commissioner Sobeluk. Any further questions for Mr. Hadley on this joint powers agreement? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Sobeluk?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Mr. Oderman?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries.
Thank you.
Next item up is building and code enforcement. We have an RFP for the new City Hall location. And that will be handled by Building Official Schwint and Chief Dossinger.
Mr. President, members of the commission, on October 27th, 6 requests for proposals were received for the review of the new Dickinson City Hall renovation project. 5 of those submittals met the RFP requirements. The review of these RFPs was conducted by Commissioner Frederick, city staff Aaron Meyer, and building official Schwint. On October 28th, the review group selected GT Architecture for consideration with a submittal amount of $8,800. City staff recommends that the award of the RFP be given to GT Architect. If there are any more questions, I'd ask Building Inspector Schwint to come to the podium, please.
Thank you, Chief Dossinger. I guess my only question would be, they fully understand what we want. I know there was some confusion at one time But it sounds like they fully got what we need over in that building.
Yes.
President Decker, Commissioners, I would concur with that.
Okay. They, I know at the one time they were looking if we wanted to rewrite, you know, and them go through and do some code and everything, and we just want plans for the city commission that haven't attended these meetings. We just want plans out of them, how to redesign that building and make it efficient so that the city can operate it and the city staff can operate in it. So you guys are confident with it, I'm confident with the selection.
There was quite a range of prices, so.
I'm sure there was.
So.
Sure there was. Okay, are there any other questions for Chief Dostinger or Mr. Schwint? Not, I'd look for a motion on this RFP selection.
I'll move to approve the bid from GT.
I have a motion to approve by Commissioner Sobeluk.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Oderman. Are there any further questions, comments? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. Mrs. Sobeluk?
Aye.
Mr. Oderman?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. We will move down now into the commission minutes. For commissioners, we've been working on something presently, and Commissioner Frederick can help me out. We've been working on an item with Stark County, an MOU, since
Sometime in 2019.
Last fall of 2019, for building inspection services. The county has recently stated that they are they issued an RFP to get a proposal for these services, these very services. The county building inspection. We feel, and last year when Mr. Gah was here, and we had a meeting between two county commissioners.
Commissioner Arthod and
Commissioner Arthod and Franchuk, and then a couple of county officials, that we can provide those services. And what that does is provide uniformity throughout Stark County, that what we provide in the city is not so much different outside the city. So if you wanted to build, and you know, Commissioner Order and we've had this discussion before about uniformity.
Yep.
And everybody's on the same page in efficiency of government. And we feel that if the commission okays it, we'd like to go forward and have the city submit a proposal to the county to provide those services. So that, and we've drilled down, asked Mr. Schwint, do they have enough staff to do it? And they do. In the past, there's been things that went on that we used to do it. If my history serves me correctly, we used to do it, and then it's separated. The county separated from us, and they went outside to a private service, and that private service, right now, be it whatever it's doing for the county, they are looking for an RFP. So if we could, if the commission is on board, I would suggest that we submit an RFP to the county to provide them with that service. And I think they're just better for all Stark County residents that we have this nice uniform service between the city, the largest city, and the surrounding. And you know, that includes the ETZ, and that would include Richardson and Taylor and Belfield and some of the outliers, some of the larger subdivisions that are getting built in.
Mr. President, how long ago did that divorce happen with the county and the city?
Mr. Schwint, Commissioner Oderman would like to know when the divorce happened between us and the county.
I believe it was 2015. I don't know the specifics of it. I was not in that dialogue. They did hire an out-of-state company to perform those duties for them.
Yeah.
that, again, like I said, I would just, that the commission would, I personally feel this is a good thing.
I think it's a great idea.
Unifying between the county, and that starts. We need to start working with the county more and more.
Yep.
Agreed.
Mrs. Winko, is this something we need to put into a motion for them to go forward with an RFP?
President Decker, Commissioners, I do think that that would be appropriate, given that you would be officially submitting an RFP on behalf of the city for those county services.
Do you need a motion?
Yes. So I need a motion for Mr. Schwint and his department, the city as a whole, to submit an RFP to provide services to the county for building and codes.
So moved.
We have a motion to approve by Commissioner Oderman,
Second.
second by Commissioner Frederick. Any further questions for Mr. Schwint or any other staff on this item?
Are there any staff that have concerns with this?
Commissioner Oderman, actually from engineering, it would be helpful for us right now. There's a little bit of, I don't know, planning works in the ETZ, engineering does stuff in the ETZ, but right now building department doesn't. So to have them do work out in the county, it would help. I think that would be a good thing to move forward with.
For clarification on purposes of the RFP, is there any discussion that needs to take place as far as the compensation that the city is requesting in that RFP, or has that been discussed or anything of that nature?
I don't think we brought that up. I mean, with Mr. Gaw, there was a cost share that was negotiated between Mr. Gaw and Mrs. Arthod at the time. Do you remember, Commissioner Frederick?
I believe we were offering 25 or 30% of the permit back to the county.
Okay. So would the anticipated RFP say anything about the proposed
The current RFP, they're asking for hourly cost. What we had proposed is that generally the building permit cost, you'd split that percentage. A percentage would come to the city, a percentage would go to the county. It'd cover all inspections. We wouldn't break it down to individual inspection cost.
And I just say that for clarification purposes so that everybody understands how those fees would be allocated so there's no confusion later.
I mean, I don't know what you guys are okay with, but I would say in that 25 to 30% range, I'm comfortable with, if Mr. Schwint's comfortable with. So.
I believe that would be a good number.
25 or 30? I know the county was leaning more towards 30. I will.
I think we offered 25, and if I remember right, they tried to bump us to 30, so.
Right.
In those conversations.
I think for the benefit of the uniformity that everybody that's building in Stark County.
I agree. That's.
If you're comfortable with 30, if that's.
With the 30, I am comfortable with that. With the additional staff in the new year, as far as code enforcement, that frees up our building inspectors to take this on.
Okay. So let's set it at 30% back to the county, if that's okay with the commission. I think they'd be happy with that, because that was what was kind of discussed at that time between Commissioner Arthur and Commissioner Franchuk. So,
do I amend my motion to that extent?
Commissioner Oderman, I would suggest that you do so just for clarity purposes, considering that is a compensation element of the RFP.
Okay. Rita, can you handle that amendment, or do I have to list it out? Okay, all right.
So with that amendment to the original motion, we have the motion by Commissioner Oderman, second by Commissioner Frederick. Anyone have any concerns with that amount? All in favor of the amended motion state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries as amended. Second item for public comments, or I guess for commission, I guess I would like to, last commission meeting that we had, what went on in this chamber should not have happened. Communication between city staff has to get better. And we have to start working as a team, and we have to start communicating better with each other. Excuses as, well, my department took care of my part of the ball, and not following up is not going to stand. And the recommendation, when Mr. Winningham comes here, we need to really have, I feel, the commission back him on making marketable changes to some of the operations and how staff is communicating. That has to happen. We cannot continue to go down this road. There are too many things that are slipping under the, under the radar, and there are items that, to us as commissioners, that we have to deal with. And that frustrates us, because when we do try to deal with certain things, we get pushback, which is understandable. Everybody wants to take care of their department, but at the same time, we are here to serve the public. And ultimately, we as commissioners answer to the public. The frustrating part of what we have as a commission form of government is our limitations in how we can interact with each other. And for some of us, we're always trying to do the best thing to get the job done. Sometimes it's not seen that way, but we just want to satisfy the public, because ultimately we answer to the public. I get a call every day saying, why are you not mandating masks? One, I wouldn't do it. And two, I don't have the power to do it. We're a commission form of government. Now, that is frustrating, because there are times that there has to be decisions made that we cannot make because all of us aren't in a room together. And for expediency, it is frustrating for those of us that interact every day with each other when decisions have to be made. And sometimes decisions are asked to be made, and we make them, and it's to somebody's favor, and there's nothing said. And then there's sometimes we make decisions, and there's something said, and there's pushback. Well, we can't have it both ways. Either if somebody's asking us to make a decision, and we make a decision on the spot, that's the way it has to be that way. Like I said, we are a commission form of government. And right now, the public is demanding a lot faster reaction time than what a commission form of government can provide. So we really have to look at how we're operating. If we stay as a commission form of government, this has come up before. We need to interact. We need to have portfolios. I don't see it any other way. If we wish to go down the road to a different form of government where you do have a chief executive officer that can make decisions, then we need to also address that. And I would say to the commission, we have that option. By North Dakota Century Code, we can change our form of government. And if we want to stay on that commission form, then we truly need to repeal the ordinance that repealed the portfolios, or we need to go to a council type of government where you have a strong mayor with a city administrator, and then you have 5, we'd have to add 1 more commissioner, you'd have 5 commissioners. Then the role of the mayor is basically just to break ties, which probably wouldn't happen too much if you have 5. But the public, I get emails every day, I get calls every day asking us to do things, and I can't. I'm just saying this to the public. I can't, because of the limitations. And when we try to encourage things to be handled internally, it's frustrating when they don't get done. And that it's frustrating for us because we do, as commissioners, we answer to the people. And then when they see things not getting done, we really don't have an answer. But that is our form of government. That is what we're saddled with right now. So we have to make some changes. We have a new city administrator coming in. I'm very excited, and I'm going to put 100% behind Mr. Winningham to make the changes necessary. But if we continue to go forward the way it is, we're just not, we're going to become dysfunctional.
Mr. President, you know, what you're speaking to there, and I appreciate you bringing this up because I share your concerns. However, I think I would look at it from a different perspective. We already have that chief executive officer in the city administrator. And I think what you're speaking to for supporting Mr. Winningham, we hired him to do a job, and that was to be the executive officer of the city. And we have to support him in the decisions he makes, how he manages the staff, because that's why we hired him for that job. And so we don't have to throw throw our whole system of government into turmoil and change the way we do things. I mean, we've had an actual CEO in your chair before with a city administrator, and it worked. And we need to, I think, shore up and work on the things that we saw at the last commission meeting, not just throw the baby out with the bathwater. Because it would be really easy to just say, okay, we're going to throw our current system out and put in a system that would be, in my opinion, redundant. Because if you have what they would call a big city mayor and a city administrator, those positions, in my mind, are redundant.
Every big city in the state runs that way. Every big city but us runs that way. Every big city issues, do you know that I can't even issue an executive order on an emergency?
Yeah, because of the structure of our government.
Right. But most people don't know that. I can't do that. I can't, if a tornado hit, I couldn't even issue an emergency order. Zero power. I have to convene the commission to do that. A snow emergency, same thing.
Well, I guess, why would we have to declare a snow emergency if we've got a city administrator there that can manage the staff and put...
Been asked to do that before, Commissioner Oderman. Been asked to shut down things because the city administrator didn't want to.
Okay, but Mr.
again,
President,
I did it.
we give direction as the commission to that city administrator. And if he doesn't do, or he or she does not do what we as a commission direct them to do, that is grounds for corrective action.
And that's why we've been through two city administrators in the last 4 years. Because of inaction, because of agendas. That's the frustrating. You know we answer to the people, but when we can't answer to the people if we have no power.
I disagree that we don't have power.
But we have power.
We have power as a group.
Well,
And I don't feel that one person being able to make executive decisions just based on one story they're hearing is power of listening to the whole commission, listening to the whole community, and coming together as a group to make that decision.
Well,
Because
there's a lot of inaction. That's all I'm going to say.
Because, Mr. President, Mrs. Sobolik talks to different people, Mr. Friedrich talks to different people, you talk to different people, Mrs. Wola talks to different people, I talk to different people. That's the best way to represent the community.
I agree. But those people also know how to use this forum, and they talk to us. There's multiple people talking to you and me.
Sure.
And there's multiple people talking to Ms. Walla and Ms. Sobolik. And they understand that we're limited. They understand that we're limited. We can't break open meetings record. And they go in between us.
That's all the more importance of this meeting and us visiting at this time, because that is how we hear all those stories as a collective group and make the best decisions for our community.
But there are some things that need to be done.
That's why we have a city administrator or deputy city administrator or acting city administrator.
Okay, we'll go forward. I just want the public to know what we're dealing with. So.
Well, you raised some very valid points, especially, I mean, if the public doesn't know what we're talking about, I encourage them to go back and watch that meeting from November 3rd, because there's obviously a breakdown in communication among different departments, and we need to make sure that that's brought to heel, and that expectations are set that that's not how it's going to be when Mr. Winningham starts, because we have to, as a commission, back and support his whatever plans he comes up with.
Mr. President, members of the commission, those issues that were present at the last city commission meeting were brought forth, and those staff members were addressed with those aspects. I don't expect that will happen again.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, appreciate it. Are there any other items that commissioners would like to bring up during the commission time here?
I do have one question. A couple weeks ago, we received an email on the wage study, and I haven't heard any conversation about the wage study, and so I was wondering where that is moving or how that's proceeding or who to,
Okay, and I guess I'm remiss in this because I did receive something from Ms. Graves, and I thought it was sent to all of you.
It was, and so I didn't know if we were having conversation on that or if that is something that the staff is handling, or I just didn't know where that was going.
She would like to make a presentation. I asked her if the 15th was okay.
December 15th.
December 15th,
Okay.
yes. Yes. That would give Mr. Winningham, she was talking about the first meeting in December. I said, okay, let's take it a little easy on the guy.
Give him more than 3 days.
Yeah, so she's okay with moving it to the 15th.
Okay, thank you for sharing that
And then,
information.
again, if there's any questions on this whole wage, please contact her, commissioners, on this wage study. She really wants your input. So if you have any concerns.
Thank you.
President Decker, may I ask for clarification? Were you looking at the wage study as a work session or on the regular agenda?
I guess we never clarified. I think.
Okay. If you want to let us know later, that'd be fine.
Let me look at my email with Ms. Graves. I know she had asked me directly, and I said my suggestion would be, again, I thought that everyone was in on this and everybody would reply, but.
It said, do not reply to this email. It's for informational purposes only. And so that was where I didn't know where that was going.
I don't have it. Let me see my last correspondence with her. She would need to be on the normal agenda, the 4:30 agenda.
Thank you very much.
Fresh timetable that, huh?
Yeah, I'd probably should put her on the timetable. That way we're not tying her up. We'll go right at 5 with her. So I will reach out to her and see how much time she needs, or she thinks she needs.
I appreciate that, just so we don't put too much on at one time.
Any other comments, questions?
Mr. President, I'd really like to thank Chief Dossinger for the tenor that he struck in his press release. This is a really, I think, a difficult issue to deal with, and I think you did it in a really respectful, professional way that respects both sides. And you struck the tone that we should all be challenging ourselves to strike. So I wanted to, it was appreciated at the hospital. It was appreciated personally, and I wanted to thank you for that because you did a good job.
Any other items, commissioners? Hearing none, we'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
We are adjourned.